Midnight had barely passed when celebration turned to catastrophe. A white Ford F-150 Lightning tore through the packed streets of New Orleans, leaving devastation in its wake. 14 lives were lost, over 50 people suffered injuries, and an entire city was left in disbelief. What should have been a night of joy turned into an unspeakable nightmare, one that would send shockwaves far beyond the French Quarter. Authorities quickly identified the driver as Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar, a 42-year-old U.S. Army veteran. The question that gripped investigators and the public alike was chilling. Was this a calculated act of terror, or was there another, more complex truth beneath the surface? Initial reports painted a picture of chaos, but as officials pieced together the timeline, inconsistencies began to emerge. Motive remained unclear, and speculation ran wild. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered troubling details. Surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and forensic data all told parts of a disturbing story. Some claimed the attack was premeditated, while others argued that mental instability played a significant role. Was this the work of a man consumed by an agenda, or a tragic unraveling of someone who had reached a breaking point? The answer remained just out of reach, and with every new development, the case became more unsettling. One truth was undeniable. New Orleans would never be the same. Families mourned their loved ones, survivors struggled to heal, and a nation demanded answers. But as authorities prepared to reveal their findings, a haunting question lingered. Would the truth bring closure, or would it only lead to more questions? Investigators acted swiftly, declaring the tragedy a terrorist attack. Inside the truck, officers uncovered an Islamic State flag, along with crude but deadly pipe bombs filled with shrapnel, devices engineered for mass casualties. The discovery sent shockwaves through law enforcement and the public alike. The evidence seemed damning, yet something did not add up. The suspect, Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar, had no known history of extremist ties, no red flags, no prior affiliations, just an ordinary man whose past gave no indication of the horror that unfolded on Bourbon Street. In the months leading up to the attack, Jabbar had been living an unremarkable life. A mechanic by trade, he spent his days working with engines, fixing cars, and keeping to himself. Neighbors described him as quiet but polite. Nothing about his routine hinted at radicalization or a descent into violence. Yet, overnight, he had become the face of a massacre. The transformation was too sudden, too jarring, leaving many to wonder what changed. Authorities scoured his digital footprint, searching for signs of extremist influence. Online activity, phone records, and financial transactions were scrutinized. If Jabbar had been radicalized, the path to that conclusion remained invisible. But then, another theory emerged, one that shifted the investigation in an unexpected direction. Was this truly an act of terrorism, or was something else at play? The case was far from closed. The evidence raised more questions than answers. Had Jabbar been coerced? Was there a deeper conspiracy? Or was this a man suffering a private torment, pushed to an unspeakable act? As the investigation unfolded, the narrative surrounding the attack began to unravel, revealing a truth that was far more complex than anyone had imagined. In the final weeks before the attack, Jabbar's digital footprint revealed a troubling transformation. His once ordinary online habits took a sharp and unsettling turn. He began engaging with extremist propaganda, following radical figures, and posting cryptic warnings about revenge. What started as passive consumption of violent rhetoric quickly escalated into active participation in extremist discussions. His descent into radicalization was not just sudden. It was deliberate. Authorities later confirmed that Jabbar had acted alone, but his motivations were deeply influenced by ISIS propaganda. Investigators traced his online activity to encrypted forums where he consumed hours of recruitment videos and manifestos encouraging acts of terror. But while the FBI was certain he had no direct contact with the group, the psychological impact of the material he consumed was undeniable. It fueled his anger, reinforced his sense of grievance, and ultimately led him to the path of destruction. The most disturbing question remained: how does a decorated U.S. Army veteran, once committed to protecting his country, turn against it so violently? Friends and colleagues recalled no signs of radical beliefs, no outward expressions of hate. Only a man struggling with personal demons, financial hardship, and isolation. Could his sudden shift have been triggered by something more than ideology? Psychologists studying self-radicalization suggest that individuals often experience a combination of factors: personal trauma, a sense of betrayal, and exposure to manipulative narratives. His military service, once a source of pride, may have become a burden, fueling resentment and making him more vulnerable to extremist propaganda. If his mind was already on the edge, the content he consumed may have pushed him over. The case leaves chilling implications. In an age where radicalization does not require training camps or direct recruitment, anyone with an internet connection can be pulled into an extremist ideology. The attack on Bourbon Street was not just an act of terror. It was a warning, a reminder that the most dangerous transformations do not always happen in the shadows, but right in front of us, one click at a time. Long before that tragic night, New Orleans had taken steps to protect its people. Hydraulic barriers, designed to prevent vehicle attacks, were installed in key locations, including Bourbon Street. Yet, when it mattered most, they failed. Officials quickly cited maintenance problems, claiming the barriers were inoperable due to ongoing repairs. But leaked reports told a different story, one of bureaucratic red tape, budget disputes, and political hesitation. If those barriers had been functioning, the attack could have ended before it began. Engineers confirmed that when raised, these barriers can withstand the force of an oncoming truck, instantly disabling the vehicle. But with them left down, nothing stood between the speeding F-150 and the crowd. The question haunting victims' families was simpler. Was this failure truly a matter of technical issues, or was there a deeper, more unsettling reason behind it? Internal memos from city departments revealed troubling discussions in the weeks before the attack. Some officials had warned about the barriers remaining inactive, but the urgency was ignored. Some reports suggested the issue was not mechanical but political. Concerns over aesthetics, traffic disruptions, and the cost of constant operation. The decision to leave them down may have been based on convenience rather than necessity. For those who lost loved ones that night, these justifications meant little. 14 people were gone. More than 50 were injured. If a simple security measure had been in place, could they have been spared? The city promised investigations, but for many, the damage was irreversible. Beyond this case, one reality became impossible to ignore. Safety measures are only as effective as the decisions behind them. If officials fail to act when warnings arise, how many more tragedies will unfold before true accountability is enforced? Heartbreak now fills the space where laughter once lived. Parents struggle to find meaning in an unthinkable loss, while friends replay final conversations, haunted by the weight of what-ifs. Each name etched in remembrance is a life stolen too soon, a future cut short by a tragedy that might have been prevented. The sorrow is immeasurable, but grief has given way to something else: determination. This is no longer just about mourning, it is about demanding answers. The silence from city officials has only fueled frustration. Why were barriers left down? Who made that decision? And most importantly, will those responsible be held accountable? Public pressure mounts, with citizens refusing to let this become just another statistic. The victims deserve more than empty condolences. They deserve justice. As investigations unfold, the city faces a moment of reckoning. The wounds left by this tragedy will never fully heal, but there is still time to prevent another. Families, activists, and community leaders are calling for action. Real, lasting change that ensures no more lives are lost due to negligence. The question remains, will those in power finally listen, or will history be left to repeat itself? What happens next will not just determine accountability. It may redefine how the city handles security failures. Families of the victims have filed lawsuits, arguing that negligence played a direct role in the devastation. City officials are now under legal scrutiny, forced to explain why vital safety measures were ignored. Every decision leading up to that night is being dissected, and the answers could expose failures far beyond what was initially believed. Beyond city negligence, deeper concerns are taking shape. Was this truly a lone act of violence? Or does it reveal a larger, more systemic issue? Investigators are digging into the attacker's background, searching for hidden connections and warning signs that may have been missed. The possibility that this was not an isolated incident raises chilling questions about public safety and whether other threats remain undetected. The courtroom battle will be long and complex, but one thing is certain: this case is far from over. The outcome has the power to set a precedent, influencing policies, security measures, and even legal accountability for years to come. As new evidence surfaces and testimonies unfold, the pursuit of justice is only beginning. But will the truth that emerges be enough to bring real change, or will history be allowed to repeat itself? Justice is a slow and uncertain path, and this case remains far from resolved. Each new revelation deepens the mystery, raising troubling questions about what could have been prevented. Were there overlooked warnings? Did failures in security pave the way for tragedy? Or is the truth far more tangled than it seems? Families of the victims wait in agony, hoping for answers that may never come. Beyond the headlines, the debate rages on. Was this a calculated act of terror, or is there a deeper story that remains untold? The facts are unsettling, the implications even more so. As investigations continue, the search for truth grows more complex, revealing cracks in a system meant to protect its people. The battle for accountability has begun. But will it lead to real change, or will history be left to repeat itself? Now, the most important question remains: what do you believe? Does this case point to something far greater, or is it what authorities claim it to be? Let your thoughts be heard in the comments. And if you want to stay ahead of unfolding true crime cases, make sure to subscribe. The next twist in this case may be closer than anyone expects.